Getting close. Hey, folks, thanks for tuning into the Banff podcast. I am your host, Mike Lafferty. Directly beneath me is Ryan M. Danks, wordsmith. How you doing, sir?
Good. How are you?
I'm all right. It looks very bright where you are there in Nevada.
We have weather today. So there's clouds that reflect the desert sun.
All right, cool. I remember that kind of stuff when I lived in Tucson, these many years ago. And J.R. Hanley is right next to Ryan. How you doing, J.R.?
I'm doing outstanding. And yourself, sir?
Loving it. Fighting the summer cold, but I will persevere. And last but not least is Walt Rebillard. And for anyone who's not aware, Walt just dropped his second novel, and I will share it now so I don't forget, because Dayquil is a harsh mistress, and I might forget some things on this. Hey, here we go. The Revenant, a military sci-fi series, Hunter's Moon, Book 2, out now.
Look at that glorious cover.
Look at that art. Look at that mechanical murder machine next to our protagonist.
Oh, my God.
It's amazing.
I a couple of months ago, I had some of the greatest phone calls ever where the beta readers were calling in, and one guy, he's an old military guy. He's like, dude, I almost got into a car accident. I'm like, what happened? He's like, chapter 20. I'm like, what happens? Yeah, murder machine. Don't you have words to write?
I could say the same thing to you, Nathan.
Nathan, I took off. I'm taking a break because I've been writing the words all day. I have to get out and spread my social butterfly wings.
And I had to cut the grass because I have one of those neighbors who works for code enforcement, and she goes around with a ruler, and the minute you've got one piece of grass that's too long,
you live in one of those?
It's not even an HOA. She's just a not nice person. Every time she crosses the embankment, I think it's easement. Every time she crosses it, I call the cops on her for trespassing.
Yeah, right. I have one of those neighbors, and then I walk outside with either my bow and a bunch of arrows and then shoot right next to her, or I walk out with a bunch of firearms strapped to me, and that usually does it.
You should just walk out with your werewolf.
No, he likes her.
Oh.
He really likes her.
So next on the Banff podcast, how to intimidate your troubling neighbors.
Yes.
I will take notes and rush out to buy the first bow and arrow I can see. There will be no repercussions for this, I am totally sure.
Uh-huh.
All right, I have posted a link in the comments to Walt's book, and I hope you forgive me, Walt. I used a referral code, so I'll make
awesome.
I'll make like half a cent if someone uses it.
I love half a cent. That's fine. I'm willing to share.
You get a lot of those half a cents, you can have a whole dollar.
So, in regards to the second book, the first book I very much wanted to be like John Wick in space. Mm-hmm. And the whole idea of the first book was, I love Darth Maul, and I love what they did on the Clone Wars with Darth Maul, but I didn't think they took it far enough. They never really really got into who he was, and for my taste. So book one was very much like the Clone Wars meets John Wick. It was a guy out for revenge. And it was one of those stories where the only thing keeping this guy on the straight and narrow, keeping him from realizing his full potential as like a Darth Vader type, the honorable. I burned my book. Seems like easier to finish it. Right on. The only thing keeping this guy honorable was the person he lost that caused him to go on this like revenge murder spree. In book two, things are a little more progressed, and he starts to become like I wanted it to be like The Sopranos in space. It's they're developing a criminal cartel as a front to finally get that revenge that he's been looking for. He gets a small bit of it in the first book, but realizes that it's much bigger than they thought, and there was a conspiracy behind everything that caused the death of his mentor. So yeah, the second book, they go like full on Sopranos and create almost like a mini crime syndicate to act on the fringes so they can find what they need to find and gain their revenge. So it was a lot of fun to write. Everybody's favorite character is that metal cat dog thing. They love him.
Can we call him Scooby?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't want to reveal his name because if you haven't read the first book, it's kind of a funny bit in the first book.
All right.
And it's But yeah, so Scooby, I've been told by several people that I need to be careful with Scooby because he definitely steals the show, and that's the whole point. You know, he's there to steal the show and show people how absurd all this is. But yeah, it was a fun book. A lot of cool things. There was it's funny because there's a lot of references to Chinese culture and Chinese mythology in the book, and I've received some like people who are like, "Hey, this is really cool that you did this," and I have some people who sent some feedback who were like, "Why are you making the Chinese the villain?" And I'm like, "No, keep reading. Don't read half the story. Keep reading." So I mean, there was it was fun to do that research. And now that I think about it, this was actually 2 or 3 years ago that was all going on and I was writing this. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was pretty wild.
Sweet. Well, if there's one guy I can think of who would definitely write a book with a guy with a canine-esque companion, it would be you.
Oh my God. It's funny. And he's just as bad in the third book, which is coming out August 13th.
August 13th. So looking here, we got Kindle, paperback, and I'm guessing Audible will be happening in the near future.
Yeah, just ran into some snags. It's being recorded now, so it's any second.
So I'm working my way through the first one slowly on Audible right now.
Right on.
So all right, cool. Hey, speaking of things happening on Amazon, Bella, this short story thing has launched. And Ryan, you were talking about doing that, but it sounds like you might be holding off. Can you give us some insight into why you made that decision?
So I have this perfectionism that means that I never finish when I start. When I write. Walt's very aware of it. For the last more than half a decade, I've sent him half drafts of a bunch of shit.
And my typical response is never let perfect be the enemy of good. Release it. Send it to the wild.
So I struggled for it, but I did come up with 7 episodes to put out. And then I realized I don't have an audience to port over right away. So it won't hurt me if I wait until the launch and see the launch and then maybe get some advice or just like see how people are doing it and change my approach. And I'm kind of happy I did because it looks like a lot of people can relate probably. It looks like everybody loves the stories, which are just people's novels being sent out as chapter form. Everything I read, there was no true episodic feel. It was like, okay, this was chapter 1. This should have been a book. And so that's one indication to me that at least here in America, this may not be the best business model going forward. But also, even on the most popular one called Wolf, I think it's the name.
Oh, that lit RPG one?
Yeah, I read the first couple of chapters. I actually dug the story. I thought it was fairly decent. But I agree with everyone in the 5-star reviews all said, love the story, love the author, which meant they were already fans. So that's why she got boosted. But they all hated the reading experience. And the algorithm, if you look at everyone who's a high, obviously pushed for likes. If you got a bunch of thumbs up, everyone knows who you are. And if you got no thumbs up, you got sent to oblivion, even and worse than a typical Amazon store. So I'm kind of glad that I did not pull the trigger, and I'm currently retooling to make these a series of novellas instead. And I'll put them out that way instead of with Kindle Vella, because I just don't see like it feels like the Kindle Worlds and the other things that they've tried in the past, that it was a fairly novel idea, but I just don't see in its current iteration.
Might I weigh in that they said that about Kindle Unlimited and Low those many years ago, and now it's still there. So it might flop and it might not. They might make adjustments. They're already responding to feedback from authors. There were people concerned that they'd never be able to repost it and leave it in Vella. So they changed it. They were worried about some terms that would make it authors not want to jump in. So they definitely listened to feedback. Now, unfortunately, they didn't listen to anybody on the tech side because nothing is searchable if you go to it as a user. Because I don't have any content out of that. I'm working on a novel at the moment. But when you go in on the user side, you can't find anybody. The tags aren't searchable. So I mean, it's got some interface issues, but I don't know that I'd write it off just yet.
The
Just
reason
go in
I'm
there with
reading-
the expectation that you're gonna, have to ride it out for a little bit.
Yeah, the reason that I decided that I'm not probably going to go forward with it is because I tried with their original serial platform about 7 years ago, and it lasted like 6 months, a year maybe, and then it was gone. And so they've already tried this. I think it's going. I think which Wattpad and those kind of places are huge in China, and everybody in entertainment in America is trying to tap into that audience, and I think that's where this might blow up as, because they're probably not going to try to make it a monetize my writing process by releasing every chapter platform. They'll actually put episodes out and their audience will go for that. Here, everyone's like, I would rather just collect the book from my favorite authors. And not everyone's going to be like that. There's some people who like Vela, sure. But, you know,
Nathan's just being savage in the comments. Hey, Nathan.
Looking at it, like for example, Mike, if you can share my screen below.
Yeah, good.
So Dean Floyd put out a pretty cool story, Red Star Outlaw. It's very like lawman in the Old West, but set on a Martian colony. It's pretty cool, but I hated the interface because there's no interface yet there's no app for Android yet, which means you have to read it in a web browser. If you do it on your phone, you can set your phone to be to mimic a desktop experience, and that's okay. But it's still kind of I don't know. It still feels kind of awkward. You got to like expand the size of the text so that you can read it because it's like this narrow on this much screen. I wasn't a fan of the interface, although I was a huge fan of the story. And then friend of the show, Nick Cole, had this great cover done by Errol Otis, the original D&D artist, for his Into the Unknown short story that he's got on Kindle Vella, and he's got 7 chapters up. So
How long is
are
it?
his chapters?
Oh, yeah, I was wondering the same thing.
what is it?
How long
How
is a
long are
chapter?
they?
a
They're
chapter
pretty-
is 600 words to 5,000 words.
Yeah.
The average seems to be about 1,500 to 2,000, like a chapter of a book.
Okay, so this is commuter fiction. You're designing like something someone rides while they're on the bus or the train.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, but the problem that I'm finding with the reason that I haven't found stories that I want to buy into is because it's just chapters of a book, which I'd rather just download the book and not have to be interrupted every episode. But what I was hoping for was something like an Avatar Legend of Korra kind of experience where every episode was a complete beginning, middle, and end with its own theme and minor villain hooking to the next episode. That's what I was writing.
Kind
And-
of like Blaster Bolts, a new product to be shortly released by Mike Lafferty and Fainting Go Games.
There you
We
go.
are
I'm excited to read that.
going to be doing an e-zine. We've got the first 4 episodes almost all laid out. Just got to finish the White Star Adventure for the last one, and hopefully that'll be this week. And then Layout Guy gets back from vacation in Spain, and hopefully kickstart out in the next 60 days. So
Friend and harasser of the show, Nathan Petty, was supposed to submit something. Did he? Huh? What are you doing? Why aren't you writing that, Nathan?
I think he's giving us some feedback there. Yeah, we traded some emails about that. So, yeah, we're working on it. I've got a bunch of stories in this week, so hopefully we'll do a Kickstarter for the first 4, and then do another Kickstarter for another 4 a few months later once we get, because we're trying to do art and back matter and gaming material, the whole magazine thing. So, but yeah, it's fun. It's exhausting, but we're getting stuff together. So
Yeah, I heard JR is secretly writing a reverse furry harem series in space.
Wait. You signed an NDA about that. You weren't supposed to tell anybody.
I'm just giving the Banff podcast viewers an exclusive. Yeah, we broke Mike.
I got nothing, man. Sorry. That would
I mean,
probably
you work in
sell
IT.
really
You've
well.
dealt with lots of weirdos.
Yes. Yes, I do.
I heard the ultimate IT story though, and this has to go into a book. If you were listening and you're writing and you have like any sort of space adventure where there's a tech, you have to put this in. So one of my friends from the Army has a very technical job outside of the Army, and he got on a plane, got to San Francisco from Rhode Island, got a couple of hours sleep, walked into the company the next morning and found out the whole reason that the very complicated machine that they had wasn't working was because somebody kicked the power supply under the desk and the little plug was undone just a little bit.
Oh, that happens. That's not unusual. I was working on a weather satellite ground station development program.
Oh, wow.
And, we had between $2 to $3 million of IBM big steel in a data center that was not rated to handle that much cooling. So we had the janitor every hour in the summertime fill up a bucket with cold water and go out and throw it on the rocks underneath the air intakes. Yeah, it's we were developing the ground station software for the latest and greatest weather satellites the U.S. government's using right now, and a dude making $15 an hour throwing water on rocks was a key component.
He was essential.
Thank you, Mr. Water Bucket Man. We salute you.
It was. Sometimes you'll be amazed at the level of duct tape and
bubblegum.
Yeah, it's just crazy sometimes. Well, you guys are. Oh God, there was a big hack. Oh God, I forget the name of the company, but in fact, there was a company who has monitoring software, and they got hacked. And it turned out that the way they were able to hack them was the admin password on the big distribution server where everyone gets their patches, was just the company name 123. Well, someone in Russia figured that out over their lunch break, and yeah, it was. Yeah,
that's hilarious. That's actually what we used to do for our old company.
SolarWind Tech. Company. That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, are we really?
No bueno.
They should change it to 123 SolarWind Check. They'll never guess it this time.
No, it's there's a lot of terrible IT stories out there. I guess what I'm saying, but not to derail.
So it could go into your next space comedy if you're taking notes out there in the wilds.
Alien, zombie, cowboy, ninjas. Yep.
Have you tried turning it off and I'm back on again?
Or the alien finally comes and he says, "Can I talk to you about your car's extended warranty?"
Oh my God!
We've been trying to reach you for years.
Oh my God! Yeah, that working stuff like that in, like those zeitgeists is kind of fun, like when it happens. But then it always ends up making a story feel dated years later. Like some of the things that you see in Blade Runner. You look at like some of the tech that's available now, and you're like, oh, yeah, you got to look at the story as retro future at that point.
Yeah, someone was talking about they were reading old cyberpunk RPGs and like their descriptions of a hacker's deck. You know, this is a top of the line piece of equipment with 2 gig of memory. I'm carrying 10 times that much in my pocket. That's what are you talking about? So,
So you can tap into the zeitgeist. It's only the technology that necessarily ages. If you're talking about like cultural things, those can be sometimes timeless. So like for instance, one of my favorite moments, because Walt always gives me crap about the Skyrim thing, is my exposure to RPGs in the beginning. And in one of the Forgotten Ruins books, they have that line, "I used to be an adventurer until I took an arrow to the knee." Like that, I don't think that ever gets old. They might miss that it's a joke at some point. Like it might not be funny because they don't realize it's a joke. It's just a throwaway line. But I don't think something like that gets dated.
Well, that's because it's clever enough to where it's not. You know, if you start doing if you look at one of the most famous RPGs from back in the day was Cyberpunk 2077, right?
Yeah, 2020 wasn't it back then?
2020, excuse me. Yes, 2077 is the one now. I mean that Mike Pondsmith. I mean that guy was like he read like things like Neuromancer and just took the next steps. And just, yeah, exactly, Nathan. Never put the specs in. But like, if you look at the technology that he's got from that book, you know, it's like the hacker's deck had 4 megs of RAM.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and it's like, you know, now you look at that and it's like, my calculator has 4 megs of RAM. You know, my cat has 4 megs of RAM.
Well, what's crazy is the last 15 years, tech has blown up
Exploded.
so much. And if it wasn't for that, that wouldn't seem too odd. But
Yeah.
I was just talking with somebody that a rover, the first rover that went to Mars, launched before iPhones were created. And there was more technology in the first iPhone than there was in the entire Mars rover, like more computing power and all of that, because it just exploded so fast.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a
It'll
danger in
probably
no,
help.
there's a danger in knowing that you assume it will continue at that pace, and I don't think that's true. You do see that in some sci-fi where it's just a never-ending explosion. That stuff tends to come in fits and spurts, and
Yeah, I was just going to say that they're probably going to reach a peak soon, and then we'll probably go another 20, 30 years of able to make good fiction.
Yeah, and you even look at the computing side. Like for years, almost like 5 to 10 years, the pinnacle of processor technology was the i7, right, from Microsoft. And now that they just released the i9, AMD, who is a competitor, is releasing much more powerful chipsets at a very lower price point. And it's just blowing the market up by storm. Even though, like, you know, they're trying to push. Oh, we have a 16 core chip. The the i9. It's going to revolutionize. And AMD is standing there going, "No, we blew you away 2 years ago, bro." You know, so it's like that competition really drives what people are able to put together.
Well, also, what level do we really need it at? Like, my phone now is fast enough for me. My computer can play any game, and the graphics are so realistic that I don't really need many upgrades today with graphics. So at some point, the consumer is just going to be like, I don't need another $1,000 phone or rig or whatever. This one's excellent. The camera's already as good as my eye. Like, we've reached that point where, you know, I think we're very close. There are people shooting movies on their phones.
it's going to get to a point where until battery tech improves, you know, we're going to hit a standstill. I mean, look at cold fusion. That's been what, just 10 years away for how long?
Yeah.
Just like the metric system.
See what you did there, 10. Yeah, I gotcha.
It's not always dick jokes here. Well, sometimes I'm subtle. So we've been talking about computer shit for about 5 minutes now. I think maybe we've mined this vein for all we can.
Oh, it's good. It's good for, you know, to have stuff like that for it's good to have stuff like that so that writers who are writing in those veins can have those little like tidbits that they can mine for or places to start mining for stuff like that. I'm right now I'm writing a Ghost project, but when I do have free time, which happens every few years, I've been working on a cyberpunk story. And my little brother is like he's like my tech sensei, right? And he builds everything for me and stuff like that. But like, I'll go to him and say, hey, do you think you could do this with this and make it cybernetic? And he'll give me like all these ideas. So to have no VR porn, no, to have a place to start and start putting stuff together is just like gold, you know, especially if you have a story in your brain and you need somewhere to launch it from.
How are you guys finding writing time these days? Because I've been having trouble with that. I've taken to walking around the laps in my gym because I know I'm not going to bump into like fall off a curb or anything, and writing on my phone and occasionally looking up so I don't walk into a corner. How are you guys finding time?
JR, you want to start?
I have been cutting out everything non-essential. I track my time as the words to stories, and I'll include some of the research in there and some of the phone calls with my co-author as time. Anything that's not a direct word, I give myself roughly 500 words an hour, and I track my hours in a separate column. And when I start seeing patterns of things that are sucking the time, I start analyzing and evaluating whether I need that, whether it's part of the business. Some of the virtual assistant work I do, it helps pay the bill, so that's kind of got to stay. But everything else, you know, has to go to make time for the words, because in the end, it doesn't matter if I don't have the product to sell. I mean, I can have this great platform, but if I've got nothing to sell.
Well, what timekeeper app are you using to do that?
An Excel spreadsheet, the Keystroke Medium setup with the Keystroke Rimo every month. and I just have one column for my words and one column for the other, and I track it on a notebook, and between the two, I can see what items are taking the time and go from there.
Dude,
Wow.
you remind me of The Last Samurai when he said, "These people wait from the moment they wake, they pursue what they want." Dude, hats off. That's amazing. I wish I had that discipline.
I wish I had that discipline.
I wish I could get more words in every day, but I'm working on increasing it slowly. But the real life stuff, managing the house, keeping the city off my back with that lady measuring my grass.
Yeah, I would think you were joking, but I've had two different neighbors in my life, and they were both former Marines who would mow their grass, go inside, get a ruler, come back out, make sure it was regulation height, and go back in. So I've seen that before.
The lady in question is really mad that we didn't approve the HOA. She wanted to bring the neighborhood, and we all basically said no.
Mm-hmm.
And now because she's code enforcement, everyone that voted no, what can you do?
She would just be
so it's very passive aggressive war at this point. We might even call it the Cold War part deux.
That's life in the suburbs, baby.
Yeah, I'm ready to move out to the sticks. Like, screw people, I'm done. Except for the only problem with that is all of the writing. Like, I realized how much we rely on the internet because I use Microsoft Word 365 because it's cheaper than buying the updates. And when it does update, I get it automatically. But that means like when we have storms and the power goes down and the Wi-Fi goes down, I've got no Excel. I do go back to lanterns in hand, right? At that point.
So as a backup, one of the things that you can do is use LibreOffice or OpenOffice, which will both open the .docx format. So that way you don't have to stop typing. You can still type. And because those are both open source, they were made for Linux. You don't have to worry about when it comes out.
I think they're free, right?
We've never discussed this actually on this podcast, oddly.
Writing tools? Yeah, we should have, right?
What programs do we use? Because like Nathan mentioned, I use Final Draft and Scrivener almost exclusively. Sometimes Mac Pages if I'm just taking notes, but Scrivener and Final Draft are like my go-tos.
I've been using Google Docs with Grammarly enabled in a tab. How about you, Walt?
I use Google Docs with Pro Writing Aid attached. Mm-hmm. I have a lifetime membership to Pro Writing Aid, but for the majority of when I'm writing, I do the majority in LibreOffice. And because it's open source, most of the computers I use are not Windows based; they're Linux based. So to have Microsoft, it doesn't even factor in because I think Microsoft products are overly complicated. They steal a lot of the computing power from your machine. And if you have to be attached to the internet, that does me no good because I want something native to my machine that's mine. I own it. It's there. You can't touch it. So I do a lot of stuff on LibreOffice, and then I kick it over to Google Docs so that the people I'm writing with or people who are like beta readers who are helping me work stuff through can look at the stuff, but initially natively I want it on my machine or on something like a thumb drive so I can put it from machine to machine, because if the internet goes out or the power goes down, I don't have to worry about it. I just pull out a laptop, plug in an external battery to help diffuse some of the power so that I can write for longer. And I just type.
Nice.
Hey, JR, what do you use? Wait, did you already tell us?
No, I just use Word. So I use Microsoft Word 365. And then for editing, we have Grammarly, ProWriter Aid. And then I use professional outsourced my editing, Red Adept editing. They're very reasonable. They do a la carte. I will say that in order to get into their a la carte program so you can pick and choose the thing, you have to send them a writing sample as a new customer, because if you're giving them pure garbage, they're not going to be able to. I mean, some things you've got to get to a point where it's good enough they can fix it. And so they want that assessment. But like once you get into their program, it's really not that hard. They're great. And what I like about them, which is why when Ian Malone recommended to me, he's another author, when he recommended it, it's so like if you get packages that have line reading, copy, edit, development, whatever the package, each one of those steps is a different editor looking at it. So you get the benefit that TradPub has of multiple eyes. And
No, we can hear.
Okay, cool. Must have been me. Sorry.
Yeah, so you get the benefit of multiple eyes on the project, so you catch more stuff because you can become sort of nose blind to your own work or any work that you get too close to, even as an editor. So that's sort of my process at this point.
See, I use like
Cool,
what Walt
cool.
was talking about with the thumb drives. I like so Scrivener and Final Draft can link through Dropbox, and if you access the file through Dropbox on it, I can go from my phone, click save, open my laptop, and pop it up there. So sometimes I'll be like you were saying, Mike, out at the gym writing on my phone, and then I don't have to convert that later. It goes straight into my thing.
And Jim Seals, freaking co-host on our Marvel show, says he uses MS Word or Google Docs if he's at home, or Apple Notes if he is out roaming. And Nathan uses Scrivener on Dropbox, just like you were talking about.
Yeah.
So I don't know. A lot of my stuff is still anxiety driven. I feel like a crazy person talking about it. But sometimes if I'm working on a draft and you ever get to where like you don't want to touch the main draft of the story because you feel too married to the words on the page?
Take a hammer to it.
Yeah, that's a smart move. I will open up a notepad and just start typing in there. And once I get a few paragraphs, I'll cut and paste it in. And it doesn't make any logical sense. There's no good rational reason to do that. But it's just kind of working around my own issue, I guess, for lack of a better way to describe it. So speaking of issues, I got a meeting where I'm going to be talking about BigQuery backup bucket security. And that sounds kind of sexy. I know you're jealous, but you shouldn't be because it's not sexy at all. So I got to go grab some coffee before this meeting or else the Dayquil might, because I'm sleepy.
Overwhelmed.
Medicine. Yeah. I don't know if I'm a little less lucid than usual, but I kind of feel a little like it. So I was going to wrap things up. Anybody get closing thoughts? Walt, Ryan, JR.
So next time we can talk about this short content you've got coming out and roll that train forward, because I'd like to tell more people about this Blaster Bolts idea.
We're so close, man. We're right there. I just got to finish this one stupid adventure. I'll be ready to go. So I'm hyped for it too. So close. Ryan, closing thoughts, sir.
No. Why are you on Dayquil? Are you sick?
Yeah, I got some kind of summer cold. I've been a sneezing, coughing mess. So just been writing Dayquil, NyQuil, Mucinex, whatever I can get from a guy on the street corner, just trying to get upright and functional. So yeah.
I hope you feel better.
Hey, thanks. It did. The neti pot this morning, and that is awful. It's the worst thing ever, but it makes you feel better. So yeah, almost there. Well, how about you?
Go buy my book. Everybody get on and pressure Ryan to release some of these stories. Let's get some words out of this boy. And then
something very soon.
And then don't forget to check out JR stuff on Amazon, because he's got a whole batch of like the Imperial Legion series, Sleeping Legion series. He got his stuff with Galaxy's Edge. So let's support these authors and go buy their stuff, because there's a lot of fun that can be had if you go and dig deep, especially if Ryan releases something.
Go buy Jade Punk while you wait.
Yes, go buy Jade Punk. Jade Punk is dope. I got it right on my shelf back here. It's I love that book.
I just put JR's Amazon page in the comments, and I'll see if I can find. Is Jade Punk on Amazon, or is that really a dead drive-through thing?
Only drive-through.
Okay.
Because
hey.
place I can fire and forget.
If you were going to buy Jade Punk on drive-through, you know what's going on right now?
Oh, is there a sale?
Christmas and July sale.
Oh yeah, I automatically get it. I set the settings for Jade Punk years ago, and I haven't touched it.
Yeah.
So like, there's a sale, and I don't know about it. I don't promote it because I'm out of RPGs. So
someday it will be too. Maybe, I don't know. I still get drawn back in every now and again by Crazy Project. So I'm working on like 5 right now, including one for Walt that's desperately overdue.
But I want money. So.
Well, that's the problem with RPGs, isn't it? You can be a star in the industry and still be not making much money. So yeah,
exactly.
It's not something I don't want to talk about, but there's a lot of trust fund babies who are like real big wheels in the RPG business, and they can be highly successful because they don't need to make a profit. But
that makes so much sense. I never even considered that.
Yeah. But I got to go do this very sexy meeting about BigQuery backup bucket security. So we will catch y'all next time. I forgot to play our contractually obligated intro and outro music.
Do it now. Do it now.
Makes me feel good every time. All right, guys. We'll catch you next time on the BAMF podcast. Thanks for coming out.
Boom.